Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
This episode is sponsored by Friskies, who would like to tell your cats hi. Now, if that didn't get your cat's attention, there is one thing that always does the trick. Just pour some Friskies crunchy food in the bowl and you'll hear those paws come running. Works every time. With so many Friskies choices, you can always bring your cats running from their secret napping spots. There's always more to explore. See for yourself at friskies.com or visit your local store.
Hello and welcome to the I Can Do podcast with Benjamin Lee. We're here to talk about tips and strategies to have an I Can Do mindset. Life is what you put into it. Get the most you can. Here's your host, Benjamin Lee.
All right, we are back. I Can Do podcast. So thankful and happy that you are tuning in wherever you may be. We have many listeners around the world, I believe 78 different countries right now. So I greatly appreciate your support with the podcast. We have another fantastic guest, Jeffrey Weiss, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, is here with us. Fantastic. And Jeffrey is definitely going to help all of us here in a variety of ways. And really excited to learn from Jeffrey. So we were just talking a little bit before we hit record, and we're going to dive right into this. So first, I just want to say, Jeffrey, thank you for being on the show and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and I really look forward to our conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have a book that's coming out October 1st. It's already available, pre-order on Amazon, Racing Against Time, and I'm sure we will get there and talk some more about that. But you chronicle your transformation from running a 10K at the age of 48. I'm 46 right now. So that resonates with me, to doing a couple of Ironman in Arizona. I've never done an Ironman. I did a marathon back in 2023. It was my first one. It was extremely challenging. So I'm always humbled when I hear people who have done a Ironman. That's just unbelievable. But it was a great accomplishment. So I'm always curious. Tell us briefly a little bit about yourself and where you are today and how you got to where you are today with publishing a book. And then we're going to dive into some thoughts on fitness, Audacity, and professional achievement. But walk us through a timeline, if you will, on how you got here today.
Sure. Back when I was younger, I played tennis, and then after college, looked for a replacement sport, found weightlifting. But then I got married, had kids, had 4 kids, and the time pressures of raising kids, starting a career, fitness really took a backseat for me for quite some time. And then when I was in my late 40s, when I was about 40, so was helping my mom downsize after my father had passed away, and kind of realized, I think we always talk about, I'll get serious about my fitness, I'll get serious about my health when I have more time. And it kind of hit me that time has to be now. There's no more putting this off. And so took a running class of all things. And the culmination of the class was running the Veterans Day 10K in Washington, D.C. in November of 2010. I had long had a goal of running a full 10K. When I was 17, I entered a race, and after 4 miles of running, had to walk the last 2. I was so exhausted, and it had always gnawed at me that I hadn't been able to do the whole thing. And so that was kind of the limit of my ambition at the time. And then, kind of got bitten by the bug and ran a few more, tried to improve my time, then started thinking about going for longer distances, and then slowly kind of climbed the ladder, half marathon, marathon. Ultimately, I got into ultramarathons, was cross-training, climbed the ladder with triathlons as well, sprint to Olympic, to half Ironman, and then to the full. And all of that took place over roughly a 12, 13-year period. Did that first 10K at age 48. I did my first Ironman at age 57, my second at age 59. And my toughest race was a 72-mile ultramarathon, which I did at age 61. For me, it just made for an incredibly exhilarating decade of my 50s, and professionally as well. I really found that I thrived during that decade, and I don't think it's coincidental that in both of these spheres of my life, I experienced a really exciting growth and new achievements. For me, it was a really wonderful experience.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. You definitely have a I can do mentality, and I love hearing that. What I'm taking away from what you're saying, Jeffrey, for those who are listening, and even for me, it's never too late to get started. Where, you had something back when you were younger and it just bothered you, and now you're like, okay, I'm gonna take control of this. And I had something similar too. My junior year in high school, we had just an assignment. We had to put together a journal. And one of the things was a top 25 list of things I wanted to do, or we wanted to do. So
Wow.
I was running cross country at the time. So running was on my mind. And I believe Forrest Gump was out in the theaters or something like that too. So, one of them was Run Across America, which I have not done. I don't know if I'll ever be able to do that. But another one was to run a marathon. And a couple of years ago, I was struggling with my weight. I felt like I was kind of stalling. And I was like, if I don't do this soon, things can change. And so I was like, I signed up for a marathon. It took me 5.5 hours to complete it. I did it in December of 2023. So I walked and ran it. But it was such a great accomplishment of being able to check that off and go back and say, okay, yes, that's something that I did accomplish. And you're right. It just does something, I think, mentally of doing hard things. It's just that reward that comes at the end. Now, there was something I have not yet done. The fastest I got, Jeffrey, and I'm always curious on people's times and things like that. When I was doing cross country, I think the fastest for a 3-mile was 18:06. And I always wanted to break 18. I had freshmen who were just smoking me. They're running like sub 15. And I was like, I just want to break 18. And I never was able to do that. Did you have certain like time goals, or is it more for you just finishing and crossing the finish line?
First of all, 18:06 for 3 miles is crazy fast. You should feel awfully good about that.
Yeah.
I never got within a million miles of that kind of accomplishment. I'm not fast, not at any distance, but I did have some time goals along the way. For the 10K, I ran the first one that I did at age 48. I ran it I think in an hour and 7 minutes, and decided, you know what, I'd love to break an hour. It took me, I think, 3 or 4 tries, and then I broke an hour, got down to just below 54 minutes. So that was exciting for me. My first marathon I ran at age 50, ran it about the same time that you did. I think mine was like 5:22. And then like 2 years later, I thought, you know what, I'd love to break 5 hours. And so I ran the Marine Corps Marathon in 2014 and ran it in 4 hours and 46 minutes and change.
Wow.
And in that race, I actually had 3 goals. One was to break 5. That was my C goal. My B goal was to break 5:50, and my A goal was 4:50. And my A goal was to break 4:45, which I missed. But I ran the Tokyo Marathon in 2024 and actually did finally nail that A goal. I ran it in 4:44:55. I made it by 5 seconds. So even for a slow guy like me, time does sometimes enter the equation. It is a good thing to use as a yardstick, but in general, I think for me, it's been more about distances than about speed.
Yeah. Yeah. You just said something that made me think about a previous guest. She's a running coach, Jessie, and she mentioned the same thing that you did. I'm curious, maybe you got it from the same place, the A goal, the B goal, and the C goal. Where did you get that? Did you just come up with that on your own, or is that part of training or coach training for runners? I love that idea of having multiple lines that you can hit, where you're basically winning no matter what happens.
I'm sure I did come up with it on my own. When I first started to get serious about fitness, I'm a big reader. I was reading everything I could get my hands on, different coaches, different books about running, memoirs, and learned a bunch of interesting things. I heard a quote once that really spoke to me. It was stupid people learn from their mistakes, smart people learn from other people's mistakes. And it's a little harsh, but there's some truth there. And so I think in something that I read, I came across this notion of having kind of descending goals or fallback goals in case things don't go perfectly, because of course there's a lot that we don't control on race day. We don't control the temperature. We don't control exactly how we're going to feel on that particular day. And if you go there with just a single goal and you don't make it, you really can have a feeling that you failed, even though in all respects, it probably was a pretty good experience. So having those fallback goals can really be a guard against that kind of experience.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And that's helped me out. I just mentioned it to somebody else here recently too. I can't remember who. And just having those multiple markers, I think, is a great way, not just in running, but in life. And that's really where I want to segue next. You have, or understand, or have seen, or I guess have lived this as well, the connection between fitness, Audacity, and I want you to talk more about what that is, and professional achievement. Can you walk us through this framework where start with fitness? And how does this connect to Audacity and then to professional achievement? And you can start with yourself or something else or someone else where you've made this connection.
I think from my point of view, at least for me in my experience, what really struck me, I think part of it came from, there's a woman named Carol Dweck, professor from Stanford, writes about growth mindset and not placing these mental limits on ourselves, that I am not good at X. I'm not good at math. I'm not good at running. I'm not good at languages, whatever it might be. And to be open to applying ourselves to things that might initially be outside of our comfort zone. We may well surprise ourselves at becoming good and maybe even excellent at something that we previously thought we couldn't do. When I was younger, I once told a friend that I was as likely to walk on the moon as I was to run a marathon. I mean, to me, it was never going to happen. It just wasn't possible for someone of my size. And so along the way, I just kept having these wonderful revelations, these wonderful surprises that, wow, I can do this. Never thought I could. I ran the 10K, ran the half marathon, did the marathon. What else is possible? And I think it opens that door to what else is possible, and not just in your fitness life, but in all spheres of your life. And I think too, like, we live in a period where people are very focused on grit and resilience and learning from failure. And I think fitness is a way that we can actually create those experiences in a very controlled environment. You're not going to go out there and just try to, put yourself in a dangerous spot or to fail so that you can learn from your failure. But if you push yourself in fitness and you take on progressively harder challenges, you are going to have some tough times no matter what. I mean, there are going to be times when you are hurting, you're tired, you don't want to go on, you're questioning why you even entered the race in the first place. But you learn that if you persist, you can surprise yourself, and you feel so great when it's over. And I think that really carries across to other spheres. And so for me, I was a lawyer in private practice for 25 years. Had a career that I was proud of, but at the same time, I always felt there was something missing. And then when I was 50, I had a chance to join a startup as its general counsel. I joined it, and it was an incredible experience for me. And I really grew. I learned a ton, had a lot of fun. It had its own ups and downs. It was a real roller coaster ride. We were going gangbusters. Then we went through a bankruptcy. Then we recovered and became a strong company again. And then ultimately we were sold. And I just found a lot of parallels. I always loved this whole notion of sports as a metaphor for life. And I really do believe that they are.
Yeah, I love it. What is Audacity to you?
Audacity is taking on challenges that are at the outer reaches of what we think we can accomplish. There's a business writer named Jim Collins who coined this term, a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. And he talks about these companies. I think IBM is one. I can't remember the whole list, but companies, maybe Kimberly-Clark was another, that were kind of middle of the pack companies, just, one of many in their particular industry. And they made a conscious decision. We want to be number one. And it drove them forward, and it caused them to push themselves. And ultimately they made it. And so he talks about this idea of defining a BHAG, defining this audacious goal, and how it empowers us, it motivates us, it focuses us. And reading it, I thought, you know what? I think that could work on the individual level as well. And so for me, doing an Ironman, that became a BHAG. I thought I could do it, but I also thought I might fail. I thought it was kind of at the very, very outer reaches of what might be possible for me. And so it was exhilarating when I was actually able to do it. And it doesn't always work. I mean, I tried an ultramarathon in South Africa in 2018, the Comrades Marathon, 56 miles between the cities of Pietermaritzburg and Durban. And they have these intermediate checkpoints. And I got cut at the last checkpoint before the finish after 51 miles of running and 11.
Wow.
After 11 hours, I missed it by a minute 44.
Wow.
So sometimes, you do come up short, but that's okay. I think that we shouldn't be afraid of those things, and we should learn from them.
Yeah. What do you tell the person, Jeff, who is, though, afraid of setting a goal? I was just talking to someone. We went out to dinner. My wife and I had a double date with a couple, and the woman said, she's had something in mind she's wanted to do, but what if she fails? So what wisdom, advice, analogy, whatever the case may be, as you think about this acronym of BHAG, which I really like, of the person who's like right on that line or the border or the fence of, I don't know if I should have that audacity because what if I do fail? How would you answer that?
I guess I'd give a couple of answers. I think one, I'm 63 now, and as I look back on my life, and I don't think I'm unusual in this way, the things that I regret are the things that I didn't do or the things that I didn't try. I don't look back and regret the things that I tried, applied myself to, and that ultimately didn't work out. Mm-hmm. And if you get to be 63, there are going to be some things like that in your life. That's just the nature of life.
Yeah.
So certainly I think most people that you might ask would probably tell you the same thing, that when they look back, the things that they're sorry about are the risks they didn't take, the chances that they were afraid basically to take. I think the other thing that I might say, and this is how I did it with Comrades, I knew there was a good chance I wasn't going to be successful. And I was concerned that if I were to fail, I'd be bummed. And so I wanted, and this was something else that I had read once in some running book or article. They talked about, if you have this big goal race, set your next goal before you actually run that race. And that way, the moment you either fail or cross the finish line, either way, in both instances, you're at risk of kind of a letdown. You can immediately refocus yourself on your new goal. And so before I tried Comrades, I told myself a year after Comrades, I'm going to try a half Ironman, and a year after that, a full Ironman. And so that part I was able to complete. So that failure very directly became my springboard to Ironman, which at the end of the day, I think I value much more than I would have had I finished that ultra. So yeah, I would be mindful of the fact that I think she would be sad if she tried and she failed. And I think there are ways to deal with that and to think through, okay, so what will I do if I fail and how will I respond to that? But I think she will have greater regret if she doesn't try it. I think she'll look back and ask herself years from now, I should have done it. I think I could have done it and wish I had.
I love that. And I want to take an exit ramp real quick. I want to come back to what we're talking about with Audacity. Clearly, you're living pretty intentionally where you already have a goal for another race before the race that you're getting ready to prepare for, which I absolutely love. Can you walk me through what does that look like for you with goal setting? And, there's lots of different things that are out there. How many goals do you have at a certain time? So I'm using the Full Focus Planner by Michael Hyatt. I really love that planner. I've used it for a number of years. So goals are broken up into quarters and, no more than 2 goals or 3 goals per quarter. What are you doing right now with different goal setting? It doesn't have to just to be in running. It sounds like you have this in your life as a whole, launching or assisting a company that's recently has been sold as well. Walk us through that.
That's a great question. I do like to think in terms of long-term goals. For example, with running, my current goal is to do the original 6 world major marathons: London, Tokyo, Berlin, Chicago, Boston, New York. I go to Berlin later next month to run that race. That'll be the 3rd of the 6th. My goal is to finish all 6 by the fall of 2027. I think, for me, writing has always been a source of these kinds of longer term goals. I wrote my first book in my 30s in 1998. my second in 2022, and this is my third, and already starting to think ahead to the next one. And I like that. I like the feeling. To me, goals give me a feeling that my life has adventure, that I'm still climbing new mountains, and that I'm on a journey. And this whole concept of being on a journey to me is so exciting.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not just standing in place. I'm not just watching as life passes me by, but I'm living an adventure. I'm on a journey toward an exciting destination. And I know I'll be happy when I get to that destination. And I know that won't be the last one. I'll come up with another one for after that, and so on down the line.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me feel young in the emotional sense that there's still cool stuff out there waiting for me as long as I apply myself.
Yeah. Yeah. You got me fired up, Jeff. I love this. You mentioned Carol Dweck. I have that book. I've been recently listening over and over on Audible to a book called Becoming Your Future Self Now by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. He does a lot of writing as well now with Dan Sullivan, who I believe co-founded Strategic Coach out of Canada. But he mentioned that idea from Dr. Carol Dweck's book on fixed mindset versus, I think, open mindset. So that really resonates with me as well. And I think you're right. He talks about this idea of this mountain that we're running towards and not allowing things that will not move us toward that mountain. So those 6 marathons, I believe, that you mentioned that are all around the world, or this third book that you're writing, right? You just keep moving forward toward that mountain. And I think that is something that's so important for all of us, particularly, I don't know if maybe I have thought about that before, but the idea of adventure. I think sometimes people think goals, it's kind of tedious and I got to track it and I got to measure it. And what if I don't hit it? But I love that framing of, well, no, this is actually making my life more adventurous. So thank you for sharing that. That helps me out tremendously. Audacity is something that's a part of you. You've written 2 other books. Can you share what the titles of those 2 other books? And we'll get to your next book here in just a moment.
The first one was called I Am My Brother's Keeper. And it's the story of about 1,000 or so World War II veterans, mostly from the US, some from Canada, who in 1948 went to the newly proclaimed state of Israel, which the day that it was declared, it was invaded by 5 of its neighbors. Basically, they helped create they helped create the army. They helped create, in particular, the Air Force, and really made a huge impact there, flying World War II surplus planes. And these were men who had served in the Pacific and the European theater. So that was to me quite a fascinating story. And then in the course of doing the research for that book, I came across the story of one individual pilot who really fascinated me, a guy named Stan Andrews. He was a brilliant student. He was an artist. He was a writer. In World War II, he flew bombers in the Pacific theater. And then he went to Israel, was one of the first fighter pilots, actually designed the logo for the squadron, which to this day,
Wow,
that squadron still exists, and they continue to use his logo 75 years later. And so I found his story to be, utterly fascinating. And it took me like 15 years to track down all of the details of it.
wow.
But so that really was like a quest. And that book came out in 2022. It's called Fighting Back: Stan Andrews and the Birth of the Israeli Air Force. So
Wow.
So yeah, the first one probably straight military history. The second more of a biography.
Yeah.
And then the current one, a memoir.
Yeah. Well, I have some books then that I need to add to my library. I love books. Growing up, we didn't have a lot of money, and but what we did have was a free public library card. So I've learned and I've seen books can take us to the future, to the past, to the stars, to the oceans, wherever. And now I'm reading a lot more biography books, but I have over, I think, 1,300 books in my library. And I see that you love books because I'm looking at all these books behind you. When did you, or who got you connected with reading and this passion that you certainly have?
It's a really good question. I was always a reader. I'm not sure if it came from my mom or just because I enjoyed school. I was probably a bit of a nerd that way. I remember reading a lot in high school, reading a lot in college for fun, reading a lot in law school. And for me, I've always been a nonfiction guy. And one of the things that I've been drawn to is I heard someone once call it reading in clusters. So
Mm,
I'd get really interested in a particular subject and read everything I could get on that particular subject.
mm,
And that I really enjoyed. And so over the years, like I read a lot about Israel's War of Independence, which is what led me to discover the story of these volunteers. Read a lot of, I love reading about World War II, quite fascinated about Vietnam. Went through a phase of reading everything I could about baseball, just old baseball stories. There's so many wonderful stories there. Obviously went through a big fitness reading phase.
yeah.
Love books about personal development, things like Carol Dweck's book. Obviously a lot of that is ongoing, but yeah, I think for me, and honestly, part of why I like writing books is it also kind of helps me frame out what I'm going to be reading,
Mm,
because a significant part of my reading is connected to what I'm writing. And so yeah, I mean, it really does open up, so many different worlds, people who've done things that I will never do,
mhm.
visited places I will never visit. And it's a wonderful, wonderful experience to be exposed to that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I love that idea of reading in clusters where you just dive or do a deep dive into something. So I mentioned I'm listening to one of Dr. Benjamin Hardy's books, Become Your Future Self Now. I recently finished Mel Robbins' book, The Let Them Theory. With any book too, I can't necessarily endorse every single thing, but it was a pretty good book. And now I've had on my shelf probably for a couple of years, the biography of Steve Jobs. So I'm reading that. I'm like,
That's a great book. It's a
yeah, have you
great
read
book.
it? It's
I
really
have.
interesting. It's cool to see, oh, okay, that's where that idea for Apple came from. And just his past with health and nutrition and the variety of things that he tried in college. You hear things and you read things, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes more sense now, understanding some of that. So it's been fascinating. Tony Robbins talked about that quite a bit too. I can't remember, like one year he read like 70 books or something like that. I can't read that fast, but he would read a lot of biographies just to learn more, kind of like what you're talking about, lessons from other people as
Yeah.
well. So yeah, I love that idea of reading in clusters. Let's talk a little bit about Racing Against Time. Why that title? Is it because of your age? When did you get this audacity to say, I'm going to write a third book? Walk us through that process.
Racing Against Time, the title is a kind of it has a double meaning. Part of it is when you race, you're racing for a time. And part of it is racing to forestall the effects of aging to the extent that we can. And obviously, look, nobody's getting out of here alive, and no amount of racing is going to change that. But to me, from everything I've read and learned and frankly experienced, we can have a significant impact on how we age. And my guiding assumption is it's not going to change by one day how long I live. And I'm not focused on that, but I do absolutely believe and I see that it impacts on how I live. And I want to have energy. I want to have vitality. I want to be able to do the things that I want to do, pick things up, engage with children and hopefully one day grandchildren. And and I want to be able to work for as long as I can and to be energetic and in the game. So, for me, that's, in significant part, it's been about that. When I took that running class before that first 10K, they had a doctor come in to talk about running injuries and how to avoid those. But in many ways, his talk was really more about health span.
Mm,
And he talked about this book that I read shortly after the class called Younger Next Year. And one of the theses of the book was, if you want to forestall many of the effects of aging, not all of them,
mhm.
you should train 6 days a week, 45 minutes each time as a baseline, as a minimum. I started initially to do exactly that. And then as I got into progressively more challenging races, I increased my training. But I really think it works. I mean, I see how my body has changed. I see how I'm able to do things in my 50s and 60s that I wasn't able to do in my 20s. And so, yeah, I mean, I really do think that fitness done in a sustained way, in a consistent way over a period of time, can really transform how you age and how you think about yourself, how you feel. And that's an amazing thing.
Yeah, absolutely. You said the book was called Younger Next Year. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
And you said work out 6 days a week, 45 minutes?
45 minutes each time. That's correct.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I've been doing that a lot more with that. And I'm curious, what else are you doing outside of running? Are you resistance training? What else are you doing?
I basically run 4 days a week, cycle on a spin bike 2 days a week. I swim 3 or 4 days a week. I lift weights twice a week. I do yoga once a week. I do ice baths twice a week. And obviously there's some doubling up so that you can fit all of that into, because I do take a day off. So I put all of that into 6 days.
Nice.
Because, I think most of us who are serious about this stuff, you have to cross train. You can't just do one sport all the time, or you risk injury, especially if that sport is running. You can't, running 6 days a week. I think for most of us, that's not really a sustainable thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that ultimately is what led me into triathlons, because it was like, well, if I'm already cycling, running, and swimming, I should try one of these races. That could be kind of fun. But yeah, so that's kind of how I approach it currently.
How are you measuring, or are you measuring like body fat? Are you doing DEXA scans? I'm sure you're doing your blood work and things like that. What other types of measurements are you doing? Do you have a Garmin watch to recover, or some kind of ring these days to, just see how your sleep is and things like that? But what resources that you could share?
I've got an Oura ring.
Okay, there it is. Yeah.
I did a DEXA scan once years ago, but I haven't done one recently, and probably should take that more seriously. I do get blood work on a regular basis.
Yeah.
I do find, a tracker, and, obviously there's multiple different ones out there. I do think they're pretty effective. Well, I think it depends. I think for me, what I like about the ring is that it has caused me to make changes. I think if you're just getting data and you're not actually doing anything in response to the data, it may not really be worth it. It might just make you feel bad about yourself. But, I've been able to work on my sleep numbers by seeing them and experimenting and seeing what seems to help my sleep. Because, I think for me in the last few years, I've decided to really focus on some of my weak points. That's why I've started to do the yoga, because my flexibility is not what it ought to be. It's why I got the ring, because my sleep is not as good as it could be. And so, yes, I'm just trying to take on, kind of some additional work to focus on things that could stand to improve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a Garmin watch, and I've tracked sleep at least 4 years now. So it looks like a
Wow.
sweet spot for me is about 6.5 hours. I rarely can get 8. I don't know about you. I'm always curious, but 6, like anything less than 6 hours, I can feel the effects. Are you doing anything else with your sleep? Any kind of particular mattresses? Are you working out in the evening time? I know sometimes that can affect sleep. Any other tips or strategies that are helping you to improve your sleep quality?
The things that I've implemented, like within the last year, are I always work out in the morning. I never work out in the evening.
Yeah, me too.
I stop eating about 3 hours before I go to bed. I turn the temperature down to like the high 60s. I stopped using like a heavy duvet and have a different kind of blanket. I can't remember what the material is, but I heard someone on a podcast, an expert on sleep, talking about you really don't want something that's just going to make you toasty in there. You don't want to be in there shivering, but I've got white noise in there. I keep the room quite dark, and it's definitely helped. And by the way, I don't sleep 8 hours a night. I don't really get all that close to it. And I think we're all different. I truly don't think I need 8 hours of sleep a night. I think where you're at is probably about where I'm at, 6.5. I think, if I can get 7, I think that's magnificent. But 6.5 is probably more typical for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to be consistent with both my bedtime and with my getting up time, which also seems to be an important thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've just been doing a lot of experimenting with the sleep, but in general, just trying to treat it as an important part of my life that I can't just take for granted and have to actually be mindful about how I'm approaching it.
I majored in kinesiology, so I'm always fascinated with these kinds of conversations. Supplementation, I'm curious, what's in your cabinet? Vitamin D is a go-to for me. I've used creatine throughout the years. That's the most researched supplement probably that's out there. There seems to be some cognitive benefits with it as well. Water, hydration, obviously. Any supplements, caffeine? If so, what kind of caffeine do you consume?
I do take vitamin D. Creatine I've been inconsistent with, honestly. I think the science is good on it. I should do it. I was getting good about a post-workout recovery drink with creatine, and then I kind of stopped doing it and need to get back on it. I'm looking over at the big jar of it as we're chatting. And in the spirit of this conversation, I will try to pick it up again tomorrow. And then, I take gels. I take them pretty frequently when I'm working out, like every 20 minutes. And a lot of them, I alternate between ones with caffeine and ones without caffeine.
Yeah. What particular brand, if you remember?
Yeah, I use goo gels. And I've always had kind of a sweet tooth.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a brand actually called, I think it's Miritan that's flavorless. And some folks are really into that. They have like flavorless with caffeine, flavorless without caffeine. And I had that once in a race. It was kind of interesting, but I'm more of a sucker for, there's an orange one that I really like. There's a salted caramel that's great. There's a s'mores one that's really delicious. And in fact, in ultras, I'll often go for candies.
Nice.
Because, you look forward to eating them and you need to be stuffing calories into your body. You're burning a lot, and you don't want to, they call it bonking. I mean, you don't want to reach that point where you just are out of gas. You're out of calories, and you just feel overwhelmed with kind of fatigue and weakness and defeat. And so I like the sweet flavors.
Yeah. There's a supplement called UCAN, UCAN, that I first heard. Yeah, it's actually really good. I first heard it on Tim Ferriss's podcast. A family made it for their son. I believe he had or has type 1 diabetes. So it's more of a starch, but when I used it in the marathon, it worked out quite nicely. I didn't have any stomach issues or anything like that, and I used it leading up to it. So that's another recommendation for you or for those who are listening as well. I'm always curious about things that people are doing. You mentioned in some information you sent to me with your book and some endorsements, Dean Karnazes. I'm not saying his name correctly. Karnazes. And if I'm remembering correctly, I remember when this is like the early 2000s when he was starting to do some long distance running. Am I remembering? Is that the same guy who started, he ran like a marathon and not a marathon, ran like 30 miles and ordered a pizza and had it delivered to him on the side of the road? I remember that. I may have been eating pizza when I read his book, so it probably made me feel a little bit guilty. He was running while I was sitting on my bed eating some deep dish Chicago style pizza, but I just find it fascinating. His story was so motivating and encouraging. It's crazy.
I was so thrilled with that. Yeah, no, I mean, his book, Ultramarathon, is it Ultramarathon Man, Confessions of a Midnight Runner?
Yes, that's it.
That was one of the first fitness books that I read, or running memoirs that I read, and it blew me away.
Yeah.
And really inspired me. He did something there too that I ended up doing on a much smaller scale than he did, which is, I think he needed to do like a 40-mile training run or something. And so he ran like 13 miles to the start of a marathon and then ran the marathon. I thought that was really cool. And so when I was getting ready for that first Comrades in South Africa, I needed to do a 50K. I needed to do a 31-mile run. So I basically ran 4.8 miles to the start of a marathon and then ran the marathon. And it was definitely inspired. Or I got the idea definitely from reading his book, but I loved his stories, and he's still out there killing it.
Yeah.
The guy's amazing. He looks great.
He's a machine.
And a really good guy. Just amazing. Really amazing.
Yeah, I love that. I do want to ask you another question. 72-mile Midnight Express Ultra Marathon between the ages of 57 and 61. First, it's hard to comprehend 72 miles. What's that, almost 3 marathons? Second, walk us through running in the middle of the night. What were the biggest challenges? When did you hit the wall? How were you able to persevere and complete that?
The running through the night part was great because the race started at night. It started at 9 p.m. So, I kind of chilled all day long, lying in bed with my feet up. Race starts at 9 p.m. And it was a beautiful night, Lake Tahoe, stars are out, very little light pollution. It was peaceful, beautiful, and cool, which is great. Because later in the day, when the sun came up, it did start to get a bit warm. But so for me, the first 26, 28 miles went great. Running through the night, not a big deal. I felt great. I had a friend who was supporting me. So like every 9 miles, he would meet me in a car to replenish my food, my hydration and all of that stuff. And at about the 28, 29 mile mark, I started to have intense left knee pain and didn't think I could actually make it, and actually decided to drop out of the race. But I was at the bottom of this hill, and I was walking up the hill, and I thought to myself, there's no rush to quit. You can quit later. Like, just make some adjustments and just see how it works. And so I made some adjustments, started to feel a little bit better, and I just kept moving forward. And then when I hit mile 41, it just sort of hit me like, okay, I can do this. And I think part of what drove me was, and you may have seen this when you ran your marathon. You run marathon and you see all these signs that people are holding up, and a lot of them are inspiring, funny, whatever. You see a lot of them, this is a lot of work for a free banana, worst parade ever. But one that I've always loved, and I saw it at the London Marathon again this past April, is pain is temporary, victory is forever. And I realized in that moment that this hurts, but if I can somehow pull it together and finish this race, I will treasure this for the rest of my life. Not that I've lived the rest of my life since then, but I'm confident that that's true, that it took me 20 hours and 40 minutes, but I was so happy that I toughed it out, that I stayed out there. And a few days later, the knee felt...
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. So what's harder, 72-mile midnight express run or serving as a C-suite executive in a startup company?
Are you a forward thinker? Then you need an HR and finance platform that thinks like you do. Workday is the AI platform that helps propel your organization, your workforce, and your industry into the future. Workday, moving business forever forward.
Welcome to Sephora.
I'm looking for a perfume that's not too perfumey.
I got you.
Serum moisturizer or moisturizer serum.
Let's get into layering.
My concealer is making me look worse?
Sounds like the wrong shade. Let's get you matched.
There's only one store that really gets what you're going for. Get beauty from people who get beauty. Only at Sephora.
Hi, Let's get you a basket.
Well, it's funny. The startup, I thought for me was fun all the way through. And I wouldn't say that about the Ultra.
Yeah.
But of course, I was with that company for 11 years. That's a lot of, it's a lot of ups and downs, and it's a lot of consistency that you need to maintain over a long period of time. And you need to deal with a lot of different things that pop up. So for me, these long races kind of collapse life into a, much more manageable period of time. And so you get it in a, you get it kind of in an accelerated way. You get ups and downs. You start a race like even a race of that duration, you feel fantastic. You're excited. You're not worried about what's going to happen next. You're not fearing pain or anything like that. Like, this is cool. This is exciting. Maybe this will be that one ultra marathon that doesn't hurt at all. Like, you're so optimistic. And then, things get tough, and then you think, oh my God, how am I going to make this thing? And in some ways, it's the same way in business. Like, you get started and it's like anything's possible. We could do all sorts of extraordinary things. Then you start to hit some obstacles and you have some setbacks. And some people basically say, okay, this is it. Like, this isn't going to work. I'm going to go do something else. And, the company at one point had about 160 employees. And then a few years later, we were down to 15. So, you need a lot of staying power to persevere through that. But I enjoyed it. I loved being part of a team. I loved working with other folks. It was great. And that's not an experience that I've tended to get in endurance sports. That for me has been almost entirely solitary. So yeah, that's the part of the business world that I especially enjoy.
Yeah. Jeff, I'm going to have the audacity to ask. You can tell me no. I am curious. Can you share what company this was?
It was a company called Enjoy. It's a very long story. But yeah, it was one of the early e-cigarette companies. And in 2022, it was one of the very first companies to get its products authorized by the Food and Drug Administration, and so that was quite a journey.
Yeah.
I joined in 2012, and the company actually went through a bankruptcy in 2016. I was actually president through the bankruptcy, just kind of to try to hold the team together, and then went back to being a general counsel after the new company emerged following the bankruptcy.
Yeah.
So for me, it was great. Done right, it's an incredible technology for adults who smoke and who can't or are unwilling to quit all use of nicotine, because the nicotine in cigarettes is addictive, but it's not the component that causes disease and premature death. It's all of the other byproducts of combusting tobacco. So that's the logic. That's the idea behind e-cigarettes, to give smokers the nicotine that they're addicted to in a form factor that's familiar to them, through a route of administration, inhalation, that also is what they're accustomed to, but without burning the tobacco leaf and giving them dozens of carcinogens, carbon monoxide, formaldehyde, and all sorts of other terrible chemicals. So our products were ultimately authorized under a standard called Appropriate for the Protection of Public Health. And for me, I was extraordinarily proud to have been part of it.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. I think we could talk probably for a few hours. I love your energy, your passion, your intentionality. This has been a great conversation for me. I think it's coming at the right time. I've been pondering, should I do another marathon? Maybe I should do something further than a marathon. I've already done a marathon. So part of me is, well, I've done the 5Ks, 10Ks, halves. Now I've done a marathon. What potentially could be next. So you're helping me to kind of supercharge and kind of think beyond and not have a fixed mindset. What other thoughts would you like to leave with the audience? Tell us when your book is going to be launched or available. I know it's pre-order, where they can find it, and how else we can help support your movement.
The book is called Racing Against Time. It's available for pre-order on Amazon and is officially released on October 1st. Obviously for me, Ironman ultramarathons have been a wonderful experience. It's not my intent to tell people you should do Ironman or ultramarathons or marathons or anything in particular. What I do think is important and what I do think would benefit, nearly all of us, is we should be fit and active. We should basically do the things that are important, that will help us live our best lives for as long as we can. I just think we enjoy life more when we have more energy and more ability and more strength. And so I think each person has to define for themselves what that activity is going to be. It could be yoga, it could be swimming, it could be Pilates, it could be a million different things. And there's no magic to what I chose. It spoke to me in some way that at times I'm even at pains to explain why it speaks to me, because I'm a strong runner, but I love it. I love that I can do it, and it makes me feel good, particularly at the end of a race. But everybody should figure this out for themselves. They should find their own Ironman or their own ultramarathon, whatever really makes them happy. But I do like the idea of goal setting. I do think that, activities like races can help us shape our training, focus our training, give us something to train for. But not everybody needs that motivation. Other people can just be like, I train to train, and that's enough for me. I don't need to have something particular that I'm training for. And that's fine. I think people who are intrinsically motivated like that, I think more power to them. But yeah, I just want to encourage people to, take this stuff seriously in some fashion that speaks to them. I think, we have a lot to say about how we age. We don't completely control it or really anything in our lives, but we do have a significant ability to impact it. And I think we should take advantage of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Jeff, you have been a great blessing to me. Thank you so much for being on the show. You are a strong runner, and you're strong in so many more ways. So I appreciate your strength and sharing that and putting it now in book form to inspire people around the world. So be sure to pick up his book, and look forward to hearing about more of your success, Jeff. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I really, really enjoyed our conversation.